This is Dateline News and Conversation. You know, I I thought tonight maybe the topic would be Israel. I think that's the number one story all over the world. I've covered it recently, and I hang on. I've covered it recently with several people, and I'm not denying that it's not important and maybe the most important story, but there are other important stories that have been relegated to the back pages, the back burner. And there are some things that were reported in the news today, at least the news that I read, and I don't read American mainstream media, that are really cause for concern. And basically, I I title this Beating the Drums for War. And there are several stories that I want to discuss with my guests tonight. You know them both, Hendrik Weber and Blas Kaučiks. I'm never going to get it right, Blas. Anyway,
very easy.
welcome back to the show.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regis.
Well, it's me that has to thank all of you. All right, the first story. The leaked recording of high-ranking military officials in Germany planning and plotting to blow up the bridge at Kerch, the Crimean Bridge, with Storm Shadow missiles and ammunition depots in Russia, as well as being able to attack deeply into Russian Federation, which is definitely a red line, a casus belli for Russia. So the first thing I want to do is ask, and I'll start with Blas. What were your thoughts when you read that report? Did it strike you as being alarming, or was it, oh, no big deal?
Well, following all this information which you described earlier, some analysts say it has to do with MI6 revenge for Germany spilling the beans on English and French direct involvement in Ukraine. So it's basically really nothing new. Maybe some intelligence services are a little bit jealous, attacking each other, but the Titanic goes in the same direction. And I'm maybe not the best source of specialist analysis of these events. You have also on your channel excellent experts like Ray McGovern who present all the details related to this. I always look for the background. What are the systemic causes and the trends? And this is something which specialist commentators are not covering, at least so far not. So I always look for common dominators. And common dominator of all most important events in Ukraine, Israel, United States, European Union, UK, Russia, India is what? Is that the globalist caste is implementing Agenda 2030 and make sure that the people are being threatened, robbed, poisoned, and killed. And this is exactly what is going on. And this is something which is not covered enough, I think, by the specialists who are excellent experts in in weaponry, in contracts, in breaching of the contracts, in geopolitics, but this background remains uncovered. So I would also like to say one thing before we enter into more detailed discussion. I would like to respectfully evoke the sacrifice of American war pilot Aaron Bushnell, who self-immolated in front of the Israeli embassy in protest against the genocide in Gaza. May I also express the hope, my hope, that people will start thinking about organizing for defense and liberation. So this would be my initial thoughts, Regis and Hendrik.
Blush, thank you for bringing that up. We have talked about it before on different occasions about connecting the dots, and there is an agenda behind all of this. Blush, thank you for bringing that up. These are not isolated incidences. I think the three of us know that. We see everything that's happening, and when I say everything, I mean everything from climate change to no climate change to migration, immigration. It doesn't matter. Wherever you look in the world, people tend to look at these things as isolated incidences. For example, what's going on in Serbia right now? They're called for new elections. What's going on in Macedonia? What's going on in Armenia? What's going on in Yemen? What's going on in that whole Middle Eastern area? It's not just about Palestine. And so, Blush, I want to add one more thing. What I look for is not just these experts, professionals about war, etc., who can give the details. I'm more interested in what people like you think and what people like Hendrik think, because you represent, I believe, a much broader view than what is being put out on a daily basis in terms of analyzing this, analyzing that, whatever. So your views, and I have to tell you, Blush, I have several emails about people thanking me for having you on the show and how much they appreciate your calm, calculated, and very articulate responses to whatever we're talking about. So I can't thank you enough for the insight you bring to me and to the people who are watching this show. Hendrik, the topic is, what did these high-ranking German officials, what did they do? And what does this mean that now this is public? It's acknowledged all over the world. Your thoughts?
As I always say, we are living in crazy times. This is completely crazy. And I don't know so much about the military stuff and what they are doing. As Blush already says, this is something maybe to analyze from something who has more insight view. But what I see as a person who is born and grown up in Germany is that German politicians are getting more and more crazy. There is a guy in the German Bundestag, in the parliament. His name is Roderich Kiesewetter, and he talks openly about to bring the war deep into Russia. NATO or Ukraine has to attack ministries and military facilities, not in the so-called liberated areas in eastern Ukraine, but deep inside the Russian territory. And this is calling for the Third World War. It's nothing more. Another politician, Ms. Strack-Zimmermann from another party, is going around with a T-shirt, was standing that we have to delivering Taurus missiles to Ukraine because they are long-range missiles. With these missiles, Ukraine can attack deep into Russia. It's a completely crazy situation, and I don't know why the Germans, especially German politicians, talk about this. If you see the rest of the world is turning around, and when, for example, Trump comes into office in the United States, maybe he will go out. He will drag out all his power from Ukraine and support from Ukraine. So what are the Germans doing? I don't understand it at all. It's as I always say, it's really crazy.
Yeah. And Hendrik, I'm going to follow up with this one. This is the other news that came out of Germany. The Minister of Health came out and said Germany and the health ministry must prepare for war. And when I read that, after reading the report of this recording that was leaked about blowing up the bridge and attacking Russia, I went, Hendrik, I have to agree with you. And I think it's not just these German politicians and military people, but there's a lot of people in other European countries and in the United States who are saying things just like that, that we're looking at World War III, that we need to prepare for war. And all across Europe, I mean, from Finland to Norway, but people are acting out of fear, and they're being gaslighted to believe that World War III is imminent and Russia is going to begin it. Your thoughts on the German health minister coming out and saying we have to prepare for war? How are German people reacting to that?
I don't know. I only know that Mr. Lauterbach, the German health minister, is the most craziest person in the world, because I've followed the reports and the news when it comes to the pandemic. I don't want to say the name, maybe. I don't know how the situation is on YouTube right now, but the pandemic, there he was already a minister of health, or maybe directly after he becomes Minister of Health. So all these things he has said about the pandemic was already so crazy, and he is a really, I would say, a stupid guy, a really stupid guy. But the problem is, in Germany now you don't are allowed to criticize politicians anymore, because they have changed the paragraph 188 in the court of in the criminal code. If you criticize politicians now, it's an act of destabilization and delegitimization of the state policy. So it is really dangerous. So it becomes more and more dangerous to criticize politicians. So I don't want to say anything about Mr. Lauterbach. He is completely out of his mind. But there is a difference I see. In Norway, where I live, the politicians say something about that we have to build up our army, we have to spend more money on military equipment and so on. But until now, I did not have heard anybody saying that Ukraine or we or NATO has to attack Russian territory and Russian ministries and Russian military facilities. They all making fear or giving us the feeling that Russia will attack us and we have to spend more money, but they don't saying directly that we have to attack Russia. And that I see is in my feeling, in my opinion at least, is a little bit different in Germany. There they're calling high-ranking politicians for a direct escalation and for attacks deep into Russian territory. And what this means, we all know what this means. Mr. Putin has said it. If he is attacked or Russia is attacked, he will answer in the end with nuclear weapons. So it's completely easy.
You mentioned a couple of really important things. These people appear to be crazy. I don't think they're stupid. I think they must believe their own narrative, which I think we all know where that came from. I mean, I think the roots of that are the United States, the CIA, MI6. And as Glass was talking about, there's a much broader agenda going on here that's being controlled by not the people in Washington or in Brussels or Berlin. It's being controlled by others somewhere else. And it is very frightening that it's always projected that Russia will attack first. And there are no grounds whatsoever to prove that Russia has ever attempted to do that, at least since the year 2000, when Putin became president of the Russian Federation. There is no evidence of that whatsoever. And so I appreciate your thoughts. Blush, do you want to comment on any of this? That the yes. German health minister is talking about,
No, I think this particular subject has been covered by Hendrik. I maybe just add to what I said before on this subject that, of course, I listen personally with greatest interest experts from various fields, like also on your channel, Regis, Ray McGovern or Dimitri Laskaris on legal questions. These are very important insights. What I wanted to add, and I'm hoping for a synergy of these different approaches, what I propose is a multidisciplinary approach, which covers horizontally and gives a whole picture and a clearer insight into causes of the events we are faced with. And of course, we have to follow the events, we have to analyze them, but we should not lose all our intellectual energy on commenting and analyzing. We have to see the root causes. And I also don't agree completely with these politicians around the world being crazy and so on. They are obedient technocrats. This is the common denominator. Some are really crazy. I mean, they don't have control of their behavior and speech and so on. Some are more intelligent and so, but it's not really so important. All of them are following the orders from the background. And we have to refresh always together a question, what is really going on? Because we already hope that it became clear to a little bit high number of people, but we always have to come back and see it. No, it's not clear. And maybe let me just mention one thing. There was in 2021 a paper prepared by Drs. Bailey and Bevan Smith from New Zealand. It was a scientific paper, C19 fraud. It was titled C19 Fraud and War Against Humanity. Yeah, we are dealing with war against humanity and nature. And it's not just a phrase, it's not a slogan, it's what is going on. World Economic Forum announced their determination to completely reset how society works and intensive preparation of population for remote control. We are all more and more intensively prepared chemically and physically and electronically to be remote controlled. Every budget in the world, from hundreds of thousands of local community budgets, national states budgets, EU budget, are aimed at building digital concentration camps. So what else do we need to understand what is going on? Orwell's 1984, the famous book, was not a sociological critical paper, but it was a handbook of eugenicists' circles on how to achieve full spectrum dominance. Wars, which we are discussing, and possible war against Russia, which is partially already happening, they are systemic ingredients of a paradigm we live in. So this is not a fault. This is not a breach of something. This is systemic. From World War I on, there are constant wars. Without wars, the system would collapse. But we people, we don't need wars for a normal, good life. It's somebody else who needs these wars. In order to avoid wars, to achieve peace, we need to change the system. But not now dreaming, romanticizing about something immaterial, cosmic, not something completely new, outlandish, but to something closer to the principles which are already adopted in charters and constitutions. And as long as we are not moving in these directions, and we are not, wars, terrorisms, inflations, refugees, pandemics, they will be. It's just a matter of when is happening what. It will never stop. So this is my general view on these problems. Now, if regarding Russia, I think that Russia certainly has the right to defend itself, and luckily they are better and better equipped for efficient defense. I have just before listened to Scott Ritter, who is really excellent expert on weaponry and geopolitics, on the empirical phenomena level. He described how Western technologies and Western armies have lost most of their competitive edge, and that technologies of war have drastically changed during the last few years. I mean, involvement of drones and the Houthi case, how the United States, strongest fleet in the world, cannot defeat Houthis who are without a fleet, is showing that there is some revolutionary trends are going on also in technology of war. So this is all going to play a role. But the main war is not with the weapons. The main war is with a finance and propaganda, psychological hybrid war. And I always say I wish all the best to Russia. I would like to support the strategic cooperation between European states and Russia, and I hope we will see that someday, because it has been already happening. I was active as a business person in the period of Yugoslavia, when cooperation and clearing account with Soviet Union was one of the important drivers of Yugoslav economic success, which was real for a certain period of time. So I hope we will revert to that. And I also hope that Germany will once again start working for the Germans, and the German industry will regain this role, because I must say that also Slovenian and Yugoslav industry after Second World War has been developing so fast and so efficiently, much thanking to the cooperation with the German industry. So we should come back to those cooperative times, but without changing the system of governance of each individual nation state, we will not get there.
Wow. I want to thank you for that, Blush. Henrik, go ahead. Go ahead.
I only have a question to Blush, because I completely agree with what you said, and you have explained it very well. So there is no problem. But the most important thing I see in my mind is that we don't have any media who is telling us really the truth. If we would have media who tell us what is going on the other side, then everything is would be different. Of course, when I say these politicians are crazy, they are not crazy. They are the best politicians for their masters, for the military industry or for chemical industry or finance industry. They get funds from these industries. They are perfect. They are doing a very good job. But if we would have any kind of media would tell us the truth about what's going on in the background, why, and would ask the right questions, then people could understand what is going on. Nowadays, it is really difficult. And if you want to find out something, it takes a lot of job and a lot of reading, a lot of finding out. You have to find all these things on the internet by yourself. And if you're going to job 8 hours and you have two children, it's almost impossible to do this job. And we need this media who is telling us both sides of the story and say, here are the facts. Now you as a reader can decide by yourself. But unfortunately, we don't have it.
Yes, I agree with you completely. I just want to point to systemic causes, because media, as they are today all over the world, are discipline of the army, of the globalist army. So there are no coincidences, and it's of course completely impossible to think of different media until we change how the societies are governed. So there is constitution. Constitution is, simply speaking, a document where we people who are born in this time and place agree among ourselves what we want and what we don't want. But then it has to be respected. And today we are in a situation where constitutions are to a certain extent corrupt. Certain things are written in constitutions which are maybe philosophically nice, as Howard Zinn wrote about American Constitution and Declaration of Independence. He says these are philosophically excellent documents, but with no chance of implementation, because at the very start they were disarmed, so that they cannot serve national states and citizens. And this is the situation we have. That first, some constitutional regulations are still okay in most of constitutions, but they are not respected. So if you want to have media, free and quality media, it was much better situation decades ago. We should, of course, change the system of how media are financed. So it should be a public utility. Like also monetary system should be a public utility. It's all privatized now, but not privatized in a way that it would be a competitive market. It's privatized into global monopolies. So media are performing their job excellently, fulfilling their military obligations ordered by the global elite. And now we have this kind of free media, which like our channel here, and some similar, but we also see there. I will give you an example how where I think media has a problem, where is a gray zone. For instance, we have excellent people like today. I think I have seen a title from Judge Napolitano. You both know this gentleman. He has a clip titled Professor Jeffrey Sachs, United States Misunderstands Russia. So at Judge Napolitano, Professor Jeffrey Sachs is explaining that United States do not, this is a problem because understanding of Russia is not good. Well, this is bollocks. How we can personify states and reduce the problem to misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding. Is it about one nation understanding other nation? Really? Or is it about global imperialists using both federations, American and Russian, for performing a spectacle? Because influence of globalists through Agenda 2030 is present in United States, in European Union, in Russia, in India, in China. And then Judge Napolitano about to visit Vatican. So our friend Judge Napolitano, whom I follow, great interest, he's an excellent person, he has excellent guests, some of them at least. Now we have to ask ourselves, this is a sort of free media. How about Vatican? Is Vatican a force for good? Or is Vatican a major promoter of Agenda 2030? I mean, information is ahead of us. And regarding this famous gentleman, Dr. Jeffrey Sachs, I have one question. Has he already pleaded guilty on his crimes against humanity with his perverse devastation of Russian and other Eastern European economists? I remember those years firsthand. No, he is telling stories, Professor Sachs, about that, and he was called to promote another global hoax of today, the lab leak theory of virus. So this is the problem also, not with this. These are free media. These are media we are interested to see, but also there we have to be careful what is being promoted. So much for now. Thanks.
Wow. Blas, there's enough there for, I think, another 10 shows at least. I do want to thank you again for pointing out a number of things. Number one, there's a globalist agenda. This whole discussion about the Vatican promoting this agenda could be another whole show, and I have lots of opinions about that myself. You talk, and we've talked about the World Economic Forum. It's right out there in public. They've stated what they want, and it's a reset. Blush, you said it's an attack on our basic humanity. I have believed this now for some time. This is really what's at stake. Who we are as human beings, how we relate to each other, to the earth, to the universe, to everything. This is what's at stake. Family values, traditional values, respect for differences. So I think it's really important that people realize that this is what's at stake. It's not World War III, which also is a possibility, but really, even if World War III happened, it's a destruction of who we are as human beings. All life is gone. The other thing you talked about that I think is important, because we are talking about media, and, you know, the media is controlled by those powerful forces, money, wherever it comes from. I mean, they're owned by a handful of people, maybe a half dozen own all of the legacy media in the Western world, the United States and across Europe. And you mentioned that the war today is a war about money, and you said it was psychological. It's information. It's to control our minds. And you made reference to they're creating a digital concentration camp. Most people in the world are already prisoners in that camp. You just have to walk out on the street and you see everybody on the telephone, everybody using the phone either to message somebody else or to get their information or whatever. It is really hard to get people to put that telephone down and have a conversation. You see people glued to their television sets or glued to the internet and watching over and over and over again the same things to, I think, make them feel good that they found somebody that agrees with them. And so this is an insidious plot agenda that has the entire world at the risk of Armageddon. But on the other hand, we have to see, Blas, as you keep mentioning, that this is a war against our humanity. And the other thing that you and I both agree on, and I'm sure Hendrik does too, it's systemic. And the problem I have with this systemic issue, and it's in all governments, is that at least in America, people think that the next election is going to change anything. And they don't have any idea that it isn't Bush, it isn't Trump, it isn't Joseph Biden, it's not Barack Obama. They haven't solved anything. It's the system. And Blush has mentioned that the United States Constitution has been trampled upon. The First Amendment, the right to free speech, the right to have free, open media as another column that balances life in a democracy, that doesn't exist anymore. Hendrik mentioned when people speak out against politicians or the government, they're banned from doing that. It's a crime. The same thing in the United States. Anybody who challenges the official narrative legally is considered a domestic terrorist. They'll arrest you and send you away. You'll have no trial. You'll have no jury. You'll have no representation. This is where we're at today. This is where we're at in terms of information. And as you've both pointed out, and Hendrik, we don't have both sides. And unfortunately, what some of us are trying to do is to break through. And I think there's enough of us who are having an effect, many having much greater impact and effect than I am with this show, but nevertheless, together, in aggregate, I think we are beginning to get the message through, even if people don't completely understand, what is going on all over the world. I don't want to get trapped into talking about Jeffrey Sachs, but Blush, I'm on record publicly of accusing him of what he did in the Soviet Union after the collapse. I've documented this in films and in many reports that I've done. If he would get on his knees and ask for forgiveness and just admit what he did, I might believe what he's saying. But he will say, well, the government in America, George Herbert Walker Bush, and then Clinton did not send the money that was needed to prop up this new Russian economy. He had no idea of the history and the culture of Russia and Russian people. And he wanted to accelerate this shock therapy, just boom, overnight, going to make this conversion. How ridiculous. And this man is trapped in a predator capitalism ideology. He's a capitalist. And capitalism doesn't work all over the world. Not everybody wants that. And capitalism, when you look at the extreme that it's at today, is really the evil in the world. Anyway, I've ranted on here way too much. Before I try to move on to another topic, although I think this is fascinating, would either of you want to comment anything further on what we're talking about right now, this phenomenon, this agenda, which is really the story?
May I just complete, because I really recommend not to fall into the trap of capitalism, socialism discussion, because it's completely false. It's just a narrative matter. These are some concepts with pluses and minuses, and just to criticize capitalism is, we have to decide what we are criticizing, because capitalism has a lot of technical elements which have been there for thousands of years, like money, market, competition, efficiency. And socialism, what it is. Are we insisting on Marxistic roots or non-Marxistic roots of socialism? And I'm not a Marxist, but I have carefully studied Marx. He's a very important thinker, and some let's say Republicans are hating him. But actually, Marxism is very much instrumentalized into globalist idea of today, because Marx was a globalist thinker. He was thinking of a person having to transform. We the people should, according to Marx, transform to species being, which means the generic beings, homo socius, so losing our individuality and all being just parts of a global society. No states, no private property. And these Marxist socialist ideas have killed Soviet agriculture in decades, and it's a very cruel system. So we have to, I think, abandon this artificial controversy between capitalism and socialism, and speak of a controversy between a humanistic society which works for the people and the nature, and a transhumanistic technocracy which works for the concentrated power. Because what globalists really want is not money. Money for globalists is just a tool to achieve complete dominance. And they are anyway, with CBDC, planning to abolish money as an absolutely necessary social infrastructure, with tokens, which will be created centrally via blockchain and used globally. So we have to be careful not to fall prey of the false antagonisms. And how is the name of the society? It's a secondary question. There was a period of development where all the autocratic Eastern systems were called democratic society, democratic Korea, and so on. And I also don't want to fall into a trap of criticizing too much what was happening in the past. We have to find solutions. We have to analyze it and find solutions for today and tomorrow. So my proposal, which I also describe in my book, is let's find a way to implement a humanistic society based on all positive experience we've had from past solutions, because 500 years of enlightenment and rationalism in Europe as a global center have had positive and negative results. And let's take the positive ones and let's abolish the bad ones, which are now on our heads. So my proposal is therefore to use all the proven instruments of so-called capitalist societies, like cost, market, money, competition, development, technology, for the benefit of the people. And I cannot see how it is possible to be done if people are limited in their dogmatic fetters, which I describe in my book. And the first and most important is democracy. We first have to understand that there is no such a thing as a functioning democracy. It's clear what we want with this, and this is a good, correct vision. But democracy has never worked as a robust working system. So democracy is a vision, and it's very well described by Sheldon Walin, American political philosopher. So how now the question and the challenge in front of us is how to implement a positive vision of democracy into modern societies. But let me finish by maybe a little bit paradoxical assessment that maybe we today have more democracy in China than in United States. Why am I saying this? I know that China has a bicameral parliament, and the second chamber consists of about 2,000. It's called the People Consultative Conference. So in principle, we know what problems are connected with Chinese society today, but as a structure, they have some better approach than United States, where as long as citizens united solution exists, the concentrated money will dominate over citizens of United States.
Henrik, you want to add to that? Any comments?
No, only a small comment. I agree with you, Blaž. Well described, a very good description of the situation. I only want to add one thing. For the most people, it's very comfortable being in this digital concentration camp, because otherwise you have to take responsibility for your life. And that is a difficult thing and more dangerous thing. And people are not willing to take responsibility for their lives. If you see children gardens, kindergartens nowadays, they don't have any trees outside because maybe a child climb up on the tree and fall down, and then it will be a process on the court against the employees of the kindergarten. So also there we are living in a crazy world. And if you are eating all the day hamburgers and you are fat like this, it's not your responsibility because you are sick. So we have to change this, and I think a lot of people are not willing to change this. The changes has to come from, as always, from some people who really want to have this change, but the most are living very nice in their digital concentration camps, unfortunately.
I really don't want to change the subject. We were talking about war and beating the drums of war, but this is far more important. We pull the curtain back is what we've done, and we're looking behind what is being played in front of us. And it's being played in the media. It's being played in the digital world. It's being played right now all across the world. I want to come back and to agree with what Blush has been saying. He's spent a good part of his life examining everything we're talking about. Legal matters, financial matters, economic matters, political. And he talks about a combined approach, multidisciplinary approach to solving the problems of the world today. From what I've learned from him and the way I look at the world, we only really have two ways of solving problems. One is war, and the other one is diplomacy. And diplomacy is just not working anymore because it seems like most of the world is caught up to using power and force. And many times that involves money as a tool, as Blush has mentioned. And I think it's extremely important that the people that are waking up, the academics, the lawyers, the people of influence, have got to see what Blush is saying is that we have to work together to analyze the problems that we face and then to look for solutions. Blush, what I like so much about you, what you've been saying, and I agree with you 100%, society has to be restructured. Governments have to be restructured to serve the needs of the people. I don't care what country you're in, but to serve the needs of the people. You mentioned China. I've interviewed a good friend, lived in China for 16 years. He knows China very well. I specifically asked him, is there democracy in China? He says there's more democracy in China than in the United States, than in Europe, anywhere. And not only did he talk about their parliament, but he talked about the different levels in Chinese society, from the neighborhood to the mayor of a town or a village to a governor of a particular region. He says, quote unquote, they are all accountable to the people. And I have never been to China, so I can't speak from personal experience, but from this person and from others who have been there and really know China very well, I have to believe that apart from what people might want to say about China being communist, well, they have figured out a way for people to be heard and for people to have a voice in the government and to be listened to. So I think this discussion is extremely important. I want to finish on this note. We have a few minutes left, and get back to the war topic, because I want to finish and would like to finish on a positive note. We've been talking about beating the drums of war. Macron is one of the loudest out there right now, wanting to invade. He's not the only one. The West and the United States are talking like this: we cannot lose in Ukraine. We cannot let Russia win in Ukraine. And there will be no discussions about a diplomatic or peaceful solution to this. These people don't want that. Their goal is to destroy Russia, period. It's very simple. And so I think it's important to have this conversation, to point out, as we have, the insanity, craziness, whatever you want to call it, of these leaders across the EU and in the United States and elsewhere who really are being controlled by somebody else. And so it isn't Donald Trump or it isn't Joseph Biden, it isn't Macron, it's not Olaf, it's none of these people. They are just the instruments. And this is something I think that people need to understand. And what is the goal? As Blush has mentioned, the goal is, I think I could say twofold. One, total, complete domination of the planet, which means all of us. And therefore, that means dehumanization, transhumanism, a world of technocracy where we become robots, we become tools of the technocracy. Final comments. Hendrik, come to you first, and then we'll go to Blush.
As I said before, for me, it is very important to change something with the media system, to give the people the information they need to make their own decisions. When it comes to the war in Ukraine and all these crazy voices from German and other politicians that we have to go to war with Russia, there is, for example, a very high-ranking former general of the German military, Harald Kujat is his name. And he was also a very high-ranking officer in the NATO system. And he knows what war means. He talks in his videos and his interviews about that it is really dangerous what we are doing right now, and we have to go to start diplomacy right now to avoid a third world war. And so these guys, or there are guys who have this experience what war really means, what nuclear weapons really means, but their voices are not heard in normal media. You have to go to alternative media or new media or whatever you want to call these media channels to hear these former high-ranking officers. And these are persons who have been on TV all their lifetime because TV was always asking them. But nowadays, if they have another view on the situation in Ukraine, then these people are disappeared. Nobody have heard something about them because they are not invited to any TV show, not invited to any interview in a newspaper. But there are still these persons, and so we have to hear what they are saying to get the real information.
Can't agree with you more. Blush, your thoughts.
Okay, shortly to wrap up, maybe. Well, the concrete situation in Ukraine is such that, according to specialists, more than 300,000 Ukrainians have been killed. They have no soldiers anymore to refresh the troops, and no amount of money can create soldiers. Even conversion of money into weapon takes time. So Macron would like, he has been throwing around some ideas which have so far been even rejected by the funny leaders of European states, which is positive. But the pressure to create a new army of European unions is here. It's very dangerous because it is an army which would be used against the citizens of European Union and not to make them safer. So solution, diplomacy, yes, but diplomacy among mafia bosses is not going to get us very far. I hope that most lively people today, which are the farmers or all over Europe, will start uniting with teachers, with soldiers, with policemen, with with pensionists, with students, and will not see solution in begging the governments for some improvements, but will start seeing solution in taking over government of individual national states around the world. And I see some trends of that also already present in the States, in France, in Germany. There are, of course, a lot of traitors in those lines, but a lot of organic, genuine people. So we still have a very rocky road ahead of us, but let's hope we will start to move into more positive direction towards the end of this year.
I want to thank you both for helping to get the word out. And this is why I think all of us are convinced the word has to get out. We have to give people the knowledge, the information, and the tools to understand what's going on, and then how to solve some of these problems. I can't thank you enough. We'll look forward to seeing you again in another week. Thank you again.
Thank you both.
Thank you.